All right, let's talk about revenge. We're about to dive into some of history's most chilling, most calculated, and just unbelievably brutal tales of payback. So, think about it for a second. If someone took everything from you, what would you do? It's a hypothetical question for most of us, right? Well, today we're looking at three real people from history who were pushed way past the edge, and their answers to that question are genuinely terrifying. So our first story takes us to Napoleonic France. Meet Pierre Picot. He's a 25-year-old shoemaker, and his life is pretty much perfect. He's got a great job, and he's about to marry a wealthy, beautiful woman he's completely in love with. He has it all. And then, in an instant, his supposed friends steal it all away. Now look at this timeline. This isn't some quick, hot-headed revenge. We're talking about 14 years. 14 years spent locked away, stewing, planning. For 7 of those years, he was in total isolation. Then, by some crazy twist of fate, a fellow prisoner tells him about a hidden treasure, basically funding the most elaborate revenge plot in history without even knowing it. When Picard finally gets out, he's a different man, and he's in no rush. He has all the money and all the time in the world to make his enemies suffer. And this is where it gets wild, like something straight out of a movie. Picot's plan is just diabolical. See, he doesn't just want them dead. He wants to tear their lives apart, piece by painful piece. He poisons one guy, stabs another. But for Lupien, the man who led the betrayal and married his fiancée, oh, he saves the worst for him. He destroys his family, his business, his entire world. And only when Lupien has absolutely nothing left does Picot reveal who he is, right before delivering that final blow. That's not just revenge, that is a life's work. Okay, so Picot's revenge was a slow burn. Deeply personal. But what happens when that kind of hatred gets scaled up? What happens when it becomes an explosive public spectacle of political terror? Well, for that, we turn to a man you probably know by a different name, Dracula. To really get the horror of what comes next, you have to understand the backstory here. The boyars, who were these powerful nobles in his own kingdom, they betrayed his family. They didn't just kill his father, they tortured his older brother, blinding him with red-hot pokers before burying him alive. So when Vlad Dracula finally takes the throne, this isn't just about politics. It's about blood. And settling that score is his #1 priority. So picture this. It's Easter Sunday, 1457. Vlad invites all the boyar families to his castle for this massive feast. They all show up in their fanciest clothes, thinking, great, the new king wants to make peace. They're eating, they're drinking, everything seems fine. Then, at the end of the meal, Vlad stands up and asks this one seemingly harmless question. And they totally fall for it. They start laughing and bragging about how many rulers they've outlasted. One says 7, another says 12. The oldest ones are boasting about seeing 30 rulers come and go. They have no clue. They're bragging about their treachery to the one man they shouldn't have. And right then, you can just imagine Vlad's friendly smile vanishing. The soldiers pour into the hall. The party is officially over. Just outside the castle walls, a forest of huge, sharpened stakes was waiting for them. The oldest, most powerful boyars were dragged out and impaled right in front of their horrified families. It was a gruesome, agonizing way to die, and that was the whole point. This was a message, written in blood, for anyone who ever thought about crossing him. But believe it or not, Vlad wasn't done. Not even close. He took all the surviving family members, the wives, the children, and marched them for days without rest. Their new job? To become slaves, building his new castle with their bare hands until they literally worked themselves to death. This wasn't just payback. It was a horrifying masterclass in using absolute terror to build a foundation of power. So we've gone from a personal vendetta to a political massacre. Let's scale it up one more time. We're going from a feast of nobles to an entire army. Our last story is about revenge on a national level, a single act so brutal it gave an emperor one of the most terrifying nicknames in all of history. For decades, 2 men, Emperor Basil II and Tsar Samuel of Bulgaria, were locked in this incredibly bitter war. And it started as a political thing, fighting over land. But it turned personal. It got real when Samuel's army killed one of Basil's best generals and closest friends. From that moment on, for Basil, this wasn't just war. It was a vendetta. Then, in the year 1014, Basil gets his chance. At the Battle of Clydian, he scores this massive, decisive victory.
And he captures 15,000 of Samuel's soldiers. Let that number sink in. 15,000. An entire army completely at his mercy.
So what does he do? Does he show mercy? No. Fueled by years of rage and the memory of his fallen friend Basil, comes up with a punishment that is just unbelievably cruel. He orders his men to split the prisoners into groups of 100, and in each group, 99 of the men were to be blinded in both eyes. But what about that 100th man? Well, he wasn't exactly lucky. He was spared one eye, just one, and he was given a single horrifying job: to lead the other 99 blind men from his group on the long, agonizing march back home. I mean, can you even imagine what that looked like? This ghost army of thousands of men stumbling in total darkness, being led by a handful of one-eyed guides. When Sir Samuel finally saw what was left of his proud army shuffling back into his city, the story goes that the shock was so great, he had a heart attack and died 2 days later. Basil had destroyed his rival without even touching him. And from that day forward, he was known as Basil, the Bulgar Slayer. Okay, so these stories are a lot. They're extreme, for sure, but they really push us to ask a tough question. Where is the line between a righteous quest for justice and just a monstrous, all-consuming obsession? You know, we think of justice as this balanced, impartial thing. It's supposed to restore order. But revenge? That's pure emotion. It's a fire that's fueled by personal pain. And as we've just seen, that fire doesn't just burn the target. It completely consumes the person lighting the match. For Pekka, revenge became his entire identity. For Vlad, it was a tool to build a throne of fear. This wasn't just about getting even. It became an all-consuming project that, in many ways, cost them their own humanity. For Picard, Vlad, and Basil, that line between justice and monstrous revenge wasn't just crossed, it was left miles and miles behind them. Their stories are a seriously dark reminder of how a real, legitimate feeling of being wronged can curdle into something truly horrific. And it kind of leaves us with this really unsettling question, right? When you're driven by that deep need to right a wrong, how do you stop yourself from becoming the very monster you're trying to destroy?